What if I told you that the biggest question in human history, does God exist, can actually be answered with science and logic? What if I showed you evidence so powerful that even atheist scientists had to admit there's a creator? And what if I told you that the more we discover about the universe, the more it points directly to God's existence? Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to see will challenge everything you believe and give you proof that cannot be denied. Let me start with the most basic question. Why do atheists not believe in God? Most of them say, "Show me the evidence. I believe in science, not fairy tales." Fair enough. So today, I'm going to use pure science, pure logic, and pure evidence to prove that God exists. No emotions, no blind faith, just facts. Here's the first scientific fact that will blow your mind. The universe had a beginning. This is not religion talking, this is science. The Big Bang Theory, accepted by almost every scientist on Earth, proves that the universe started from a single point 13.8 billion years ago. Before that, there was nothing. No space, no time, no matter, no energy, absolute nothing. Now here's the logical question that atheists cannot answer. If there was absolute nothing, how did something come from nothing? Science has a fundamental law called the law of causality. Everything that begins to exist must have a cause. You cannot get something from nothing. That's scientifically impossible. So if the universe began to exist, it must have a cause. And that cause cannot be physical, because physical things didn't exist before the universe. That cause must be outside of space, outside of time, unimaginably powerful, and able to create something from nothing. What does that sound like? That's exactly what we call God. But wait, atheists will say the universe created itself. Hold on. That's logically impossible. For something to create itself, it would have to exist before it existed. That's a logical contradiction. You cannot create yourself because you would have to exist before you exist to create yourself. That makes no sense. Some atheists say maybe the universe always existed. Wrong again. Scientists discovered that the universe is expanding. When you reverse that expansion mathematically, everything goes back to a single point. A beginning. The evidence is undeniable. The universe had a starting point. Here's another scientific fact that will shock you. The universe is perfectly fine-tuned for life. I'm talking about something called the fine-tuning argument. And this is where science gets absolutely mind-blowing. Listen to this carefully. Scientists have discovered that there are over 200 physical constants in the universe that have to be exactly precise for life to exist. I'm talking about things like gravity, electromagnetic force, the strong nuclear force, the weak nuclear force, and dozens of other values. Think about that for a second. We're talking about precision so exact that it's like throwing a dart from outer space and hitting a bullseye the size of a single atom on Earth. And that's just one constant. There are over 200 of these. Here's another example that will shock you. The cosmological constant, which controls the expansion rate of the universe, is fine-tuned to 1 part in 10 to the power of 120. That's a number so big that if you wrote out all the zeros, it would fill up multiple books. If this number was off by even the tiniest fraction, the universe would have either exploded too fast for galaxies to form, or collapsed back on itself instantly. The strong nuclear force that holds atoms together is fine-tuned to 1 part in 10,000. If it was slightly stronger, no hydrogen would exist, meaning no stars, no water, no life. If it was slightly weaker, only hydrogen would exist, meaning no heavy elements, no planets, no life. The electromagnetic force is perfectly balanced with gravity at exactly the right ratio. If it was different by just 1 part in 10 to the power of 40, stars like our sun couldn't exist. Are you seeing the pattern here? The universe is not random. It's precisely calibrated. And here's what will blow your mind. What are the odds of all these constants being exactly right by chance? Mathematicians calculated it. The probability is 1 in 10 to the power of 230.
Let me put that number in perspective for you. There are only 10 to the power of 80 atoms in the entire observable universe. This means the odds of our universe existing by chance are so small that it's basically impossible. You have a better chance of randomly picking one specific atom out of a trillion universes. Sir Fred Hoyle, a famous atheist astronomer, studied this fine-tuning and said, "A common-sense interpretation of the facts suggests that a super-intellect has monkeyed with physics, as well as chemistry and biology." In other words, even this atheist scientist admitted the universe looks designed. But here's where it gets even more incredible. Let me tell you about DNA. Every single cell in your body contains DNA, and DNA is essentially a code. It's a biological computer program written in a 4-letter chemical alphabet that contains precise instructions for building proteins which build your entire body. The amount of information in your DNA is staggering. If you wrote out all the information in the DNA of just one human cell, it would fill 1,000 books of 500 pages each. That's 3 billion letters of perfectly organized information. And that's just one cell. Your body has 37 trillion cells. Now here's the logical question. Where does information come from? In our entire human experience, information always comes from intelligence. Always. The words you're hearing right now came from my intelligence. The software on your phone came from programmers' intelligence. Books come from authors. Code comes from coders. We have never ever observed information arising from non-intelligence. Never. So if DNA contains more information than 1,000 books, where did that information come from? There are only 2 options: random chance or intelligent design. Can random chance create information? Let's test that. If I gave you a bag full of letters and you randomly threw them on the floor millions of times, would they ever spell out even one meaningful sentence? No. You might get a few random words by accident, but never organized, complex information. And DNA is not just a sentence. It's 3 billion letters of perfectly organized information that works like the most advanced computer program ever created. Random chance cannot produce that. That's scientifically and logically impossible. Dr. Francis Collins, who led the Human Genome Project and was an atheist, said after mapping human DNA, "I found it impossible to imagine how such a vast instruction book came to be written without some form of intelligence guiding the process." He became a believer in God because the evidence was overwhelming. Here's another scientific fact that proves God's existence: the origin of life. Atheists believe that life started by random chemical reactions in a primordial soup, but here's what science actually tells us. The simplest living cell needs at least 250 to 400 genes working together perfectly. Each gene is made of thousands of DNA base pairs arranged in exact sequences. For the simplest life to form by random chance, you would need all these components to come together at the same time, in the right place, in the right order, and start working together. Scientists calculated the probability of this happening. The odds are 1 in 10 to the power of 40,000. That's not a typo. That's a 1 followed by 40,000 zeros. To give you perspective, the number of atoms in the entire universe is only 10 to the power of 80. Here's another powerful argument. The universe is rationally intelligible. What does that mean? It means the universe follows mathematical laws that our minds can understand. Einstein said, "The most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it is comprehensible." Why should our brains, which evolved to help us survive in the African savanna, be able to understand quantum mechanics, relativity, and the structure of the entire cosmos? If we're just products of random evolution, there's no reason our minds should be able to grasp the fundamental nature of reality. The fact that mathematics perfectly describes the universe, the fact that our minds can understand this mathematics, the fact that the universe is rational and orderly, all of this points to a rational mind that designed both the universe and our minds. Now let me address the most common atheist arguments. Atheists say, "Who created God?" If everything needs a creator, who created God? This is a misunderstanding of the argument. We're not saying everything needs a creator. We're saying everything that begins to exist needs a creator. God, by definition, is eternal. He didn't begin to exist. He always existed. This is not special pleading. It's a logical necessity. You cannot have an infinite regress of causes. There must be an uncaused first cause, and that is God. Atheists say, science will eventually explain everything. We don't need God. But here's the problem. Science can only study what already exists. Science cannot explain why anything exists in the first place. Science assumes the universe exists and studies how it works. But science cannot answer why there is something rather than nothing. Some atheists propose the multiverse theory. They say maybe there are infinite universes with different physical constants, and we just happen to be in the one that works. But this doesn't solve anything. First, there's zero evidence for other universes. Second, even if they exist, who created the multiverse? You're just pushing the question back one step. And here's the key point. The multiverse theory requires more faith than belief in God. You're believing in trillions of undetectable, unprovable universes just to avoid believing in one God. That's not science, that's atheistic faith. Let me tell you about famous atheists who became believers when they honestly examined the evidence. Anthony Flew was one of the most famous atheist philosophers of the 20th century. For 50 years, he argued against God's existence. But at age 81, he shocked the world by announcing he now believed in God. Why? Because of the scientific evidence. He said the complexity of DNA, the fine-tuning of the universe, and the origin of life all pointed to intelligent design. He followed the evidence where it led, even though it contradicted his life's work. Dr. Francis Collins, who led the Human Genome Project, was an atheist who became a Christian after seeing the complexity of human DNA. Dr. Alan Sandage, one of the greatest astronomers of the 20th century, became a believer at age 50 after studying the Big Bang and the fine-tuning of the universe. These are not uneducated people. These are brilliant scientists who examined the evidence and concluded that God exists. They didn't convert because of emotions or because they were brainwashed. They converted because the scientific evidence was overwhelming. Here's something that will blow your mind. The Quran, revealed 1,400 years ago, describes the Big Bang. Chapter 21, verse 30 says, "Have those who disbelieved not considered that the heavens and the earth were a joined entity and we separated them?" That's the Big Bang described 1,400 years before science discovered it. The Quran says the universe is expanding in chapter 51, verse 47. "And the heaven we constructed with strength, and indeed, we are expanding it." Scientists only discovered the expanding universe in 1929. but the Quran stated it 1,400 years ago. The Quran describes embryology, oceanography, astronomy, geology, with scientific accuracy that was impossible for a 7th century human to know. How did an illiterate man in the desert know these scientific facts? The only logical explanation is that this information came from the Creator who knows His creation. Now let me make this personal. If you're an atheist watching this, I respect you. I'm not here to mock you or attack you. I'm here to present evidence. And the evidence clearly points to God's existence. Look at the universe around you. The fine-tuning, the complexity, the order, the beauty, the mathematical precision. Look at life, at DNA, at consciousness, at morality. Look at the Big Bang, the origin of the universe from nothing. All of this screams design. All of this points to a creator. You can choose to ignore the evidence. You can choose to have faith that random chance created everything despite the astronomically impossible odds. But is that really more rational than believing in God? Here's the truth. Atheism requires more faith than theism. You have to believe that nothing created everything, that non-life created life, that chaos created order, that randomness created precision, that unconscious matter created consciousness. That's not science, that's blind faith. Believing in God is the rational position. It's the position supported by science, logic, and evidence. The universe had a beginning. It needs a beginner. The universe is fine-tuned. It needs a fine-tuner. Life contains information. It needs an information giver. We have consciousness. It needs a conscious creator. And here's the most important part. This God who created everything, who designed the universe with such precision, who gave us life and consciousness, He didn't just create us and leave us. He sent us guidance. He sent us prophets, scriptures, signs. He wants a relationship with us. In Islam, we call this God Allah, which literally means the God in Arabic. Allah is not a different God. He's the same God that Jews and Christians believe in. He's the creator, the sustainer, the all-knowing, the all-powerful. And Allah tells us in the Quran, "Indeed, in the creation of the heavens and the earth and the alternation of the night and the day are signs for people of understanding. Those who remember Allah while standing, sitting, and lying on their sides and reflect on the creation of the heavens and the earth, saying, 'Our Lord, you did not create all this in vain. Glory be to you.'" That's what this video is about. Looking at creation and recognizing the Creator. Using your mind, your logic, your reason to see the obvious truth that atheism desperately tries to deny. So here's my challenge to you. If you're an atheist, don't just dismiss this. Actually think about the evidence. Look at the fine-tuning. Look at DNA. Look at the origin of life. Look at consciousness. Look at the Big Bang. Be honest with yourself. What does the evidence really say? And if you're searching for God, if you're on the fence, if you're questioning, this is your sign. The evidence is overwhelming. God exists. He created you. He knows you. He loves you, and He wants you to know Him. If this video made you think, if it challenged you, if it opened your eyes to something new, smash that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to see this evidence. And subscribe because I have so much more proof to show you. Drop a comment below. Are you an atheist? What's your response to this evidence? Are you a believer? Share your story. Let's have an honest conversation in the comments. Remember, the greatest scientists, the greatest minds in history believed in God. Newton, Einstein, Galileo, Kepler, Faraday, Pasteur, all believers. They saw the fingerprints of God all over creation. The universe is not an accident. You are not an accident. You were created with purpose by a loving God who wants you to know Him, worship Him, and return to Him. This is not blind faith. This is evidence-based belief. This is rational, logical, scientific faith. And it's time for the world to wake up and recognize the obvious truth. God exists and He deserves our worship. May Allah guide all of us to the truth and give us the courage to follow it wherever it leads. Ameen.